For those of you who haven't met me, my name is Sol. I am a fourth year medical student in Australia, and my channel is a little bit about what it's like to be a medical student, and I'm also trying to part my wisdom on tips and tricks on how to get through med school. I certainly struggled a lot in my junior years trying to figure out what I was meant to know and how to do it most efficiently, so I'm hoping I can share some of that knowledge to someone who's also hoping to seek that information. If you have any questions about what medical school is like, what to expect once you start your clinical years, what you should study, what you should focus on, what's not so important, or anything else you can think of, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll do my best to answer it. If you could also like and subscribe so I can start building my channel, I would really appreciate that. Without further ado, let's get to the purpose of this video. I thought a really relevant topic would be how to make yourself useful while on clinical placements. I know when I started on my first clinical placements, I definitely felt as though I had fallen into a very, very deep, dark pool and I was treading in water, or if I didn't feel like that, I felt like I was a fly on the wall. I felt like I was in the way of the team probably thought I was in their way, I wasn't being useful to them, and I definitely could have been getting more out of my placements than I was. So how do you actually make the most of your placements? Well, it's pretty simple. You don't have to know a whole lot to be involved in a team and make yourself feel like you're part of a team. It might be as simple as introducing yourself to the consultant, to the team, being warm and welcome to them, and that is such a useful tool because A, you're building your social skills and you're building your confidence, and it's something that you'll always need in your professional life, is to be able to approach people and talk to them. Another thing that is really, really useful is knowing the layout of your hospital, so knowing how to get from point A to point B and the most efficient and quickest way to do that, knowing where all the request forms or testing equipment or anything like that might be, because you might be with doctors who are new to the hospital, you might have to navigate to areas on your own, and knowing how to do that is such a help to a team. It's also a help to you because you don't waste time. And I found that throughout my placements, even just showing that initiative goes a long way. You get a lot more opportunities out of it if you just seem engaged and willing to be part of the team. The next thing is writing notes. Learning how to write clinical notes is such a useful skill. You'll have to do it the entirety of the rest of your medical career. You might be dictating them to someone in senior years, but you'll definitely have to do it in your junior years. A very simple way that I think is very efficient and a useful way of collecting your thoughts. Some place might do it differently, but I think most people use the SOAP method. So S for subjective, so what is the patient telling you? O for objective, what can you see? So this can include things like observation charts, blood test results that are relevant to their condition. A for assessment, so that's the physical examination part, and then P for plan, what would you like to do next? And that involves documenting things like taking blood tests, doing referrals, changing medications so nursing staff are aware of that. Now, I forgot to say, at the start of all that, you always say the team, conditions that the patient is presenting for. If you want me to go all over that in thorough detail, I'm happy to do a YouTube video on it with a couple of examples so we can work through it so you can have an idea of how to formulate a good patient note. Now, part of being helpful to the team is knowing how to write request forms. So that might be blood forms, imaging forms. Those are probably the two main ones you have to do. Obviously, with all these forms, make sure that you're allowed to do it on behalf of your university, like medico-legally speaking, and that the hospital's okay with it and that your team's okay with it. And obviously, before you are actually a doctor, you have to get all your work countersigned. So please, 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 if you're writing a medical progress note, get someone else to sign it and check over your work. It's a safety net for you and a safety net for them. Now, you might be with a team where you can't write notes, and that's okay. Sometimes, for instance, in psychiatric cases or things that might involve legal ordinance, oh my god, there's a big spider, legal processes, it needs to be documented really specifically, so that you might not get to write notes for that, but that's okay, because what you can do is get another piece of paper, if your hospital writes on paper or if you've got a book with you, and write out what you would say, because it's a good practice for you to kind of get into that mindset, because one day you will have to do that too. I think one of the most important ways of showing that you're engaged in a team is asking lots of questions. Now, that comes with a caveat. Obviously, it's not always appropriate to ask questions. For instance, if you're currently talking to a patient, you're not going to ask a question. Sometimes, if a team's really busy, that might be limited to asking questions while you're walking from one ward to another. And if you can't ask questions then it's always important to write them down and ask them at another point in time. But I really think it's important to ask questions. It shows you're interested. And if you're interested, you get so many more opportunities, because it builds rapport with the teams, and then they're more likely to give you opportunities. They're more happy to teach you because you seem engaged, and it helps your own learning. Even if you can look it up, ask them. They might have some tip or trick that you haven't heard of. It might stick better in your head because they can give you a patient example. Just honestly, it never hurts to ask. I think one of the best ways to really engage with a team when they're busy and you're not learning a lot is by applying your own knowledge. So that would be revising a topic. For example, endocrinology. Things you might want to revise include diabetes, obviously, so type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Then you'd also want to focus on other things. So endocrinology is the study of hormones, so you'd be thinking of thyroid things, so you might want to study that. You might want to think about electrolyte imbalances like hyponatremia and hypercalcemia, because those are very relevant for endocrinology. And once you've learnt everything, or you feel like you've got a good grasp of it, go and find someone who's admitted under that ward who has one of those conditions, and you go and ask them questions, and you see if you can decipher from that whether or not they have that condition. Now, you might go into it blind, or you might go into it knowing that they have that condition, and just see if that aligns with your preconceived ideas of how someone might present with that condition. That will also involve doing an examination if it's relevant, and the more examinations you do and the more histories you do, the more confident you get, and it just makes you better at your future job. It makes you more confident, and it prepares you for OSCEs. Now, once you've done all that, it's always a good idea to share your findings with someone on the team, because it's a good practice to learn how to hand over information succinctly. You might also have uncovered something that the team didn't know. I've had countless times where I've talked to a patient and they've told me something that they haven't told the team that completely changes the trajectory of the diagnosis or how they're going to treat them or anything like that. So it's always important to share that information, because you never know what you might uncover. But it's also a good skill to practice handing over medical information. And then obviously, if you have any assessment forms, you can get those checked off at that point in time. Now, there are going to be times where you get things wrong, and I'm going to share you a big secret now. Getting things wrong is the best learning experience. Yes, it can be humiliating. It doesn't feel great, but you're going to remember that for the rest of your life, and you won't get it wrong again. You will remember it so well. So if you're not sure, but you think you could be right, always answer that question, because if you're wrong, you will learn from it. And it's very rarely that you will get a clinician who scolds you for it. I think it was back in the day when it was more patriarchal medicine, and you definitely probably got scolded a little bit more. But most physicians these days, surgeons and doctors and whatnot, most doctors these days are really lovely at teaching, specifically if you're in a teaching hospital. They know you're a student, they know you're learning, and they're there to help you. So answer questions, get things wrong, and learn from it. One of the most important things, I think, in your junior years is building your confidence. And you do that through things I already said. So writing notes, interacting with the team, taking patient histories, and learning from your mistakes. Building confidence is so essential. It makes you appear like you know what you're doing when you don't. It makes people listen to you when you have an opinion, and it just makes you feel good. Comparing yourself to a year ago to where you've come to now makes you feel so validated at what you do, and it grows your own confidence, and it makes future learning experiences so much easier because you know you should be there. Now, probably my last piece of wisdom is keep doing that one thing that you absolutely love. medical school is so busy. We do so much. We have so many hours we have to be there. And then once we've been there from 8 to 5, or might be earlier, might be later, we're still expected to study. But you have to keep doing that one thing that you love, whether it's only 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour of, it might be exercise, cooking, playing a video game, reading a book, listening to music, playing music, anything like that. Keep doing it, because the last thing you want is to burn out before your career has even started. So many people I've talked to, all they did was study, and then they get to internship year, and then they work, and then they keep going through and they're working and they never stop, and they don't have a hobby. They've lost their hobby. They don't know what to do in their free time, and they're so burnt out. So finding that hobby now and sticking to it, make sure that you have a good work-life balance. It actually makes you better at being a student. It makes you better at being a doctor, because you have that clarity to study. You have the capacity to keep going because you're not burnt out. You need that balance. Yes, you might know a little bit less the next day, but at least you feel refreshed and relaxed and energized to go at it again.